I watched my son's face turn white as he stared at his phone. Mom. Mom, what did you do? The mortgage payment. It bounced. They're saying the account is closed. I took a sip of my coffee sitting in my kitchen, in my house, the one I'd paid off 30 years ago. Oh, that account. Yes, I closed it last Tuesday. My name is Lorraine Mitchell, and I'm 72 years old. Before I tell you what happened, I'd love to know. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city or state in the comments. It helps me know I'm not alone in this, and maybe my story will help someone else out there who's going through something similar. Now, let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand. I wasn't always the woman who could cut off her own children without flinching. I raised 3 children. Daniel, my oldest, at 48, Rebecca, 45, and Anthony, my baby, at 42. Their father, Tom, passed away 6 years ago from a heart attack. Sudden, devastating. One morning he was drinking his coffee and reading the newspaper, and by that afternoon he was gone. Tom had been a good provider. We'd been married 46 years. He left me comfortable, not wealthy, but comfortable. A paid-off house in Sacramento, a decent life insurance policy, and his pension that converted to survivor benefits. We'd saved diligently our whole lives. We'd lived modestly. We'd planned for retirement. What Tom and I hadn't planned for was how quickly our children would come circling after he died. It started small. Daniel needed help with a down payment for a bigger house. His consulting business was between contracts, and his wife Jennifer had just had their 3rd child, $25,000. I wrote the check because that's what mothers do. That's what Tom would have wanted. Then Rebecca. Her marriage was falling apart, she said. Lawyer fees were astronomical. Could I help? Another $18,000. Of course I could. She was my daughter, going through a divorce. How could I say no? Anthony was the most frequent. His restaurant wasn't doing well. He needed to make payroll. Equipment broke down. The health inspector required upgrades. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. Small amounts that added up over time. But here's what I told myself. I had it. Tom and I had worked hard. We'd sacrificed. If I couldn't help my own children, what was the point of having anything at all? The first 2 years after Tom died were the hardest. I was lonely. The house felt enormous. Every corner held a memory. I'd wake up in the middle of the night reaching for him, only to find cold sheets. My children knew this. They saw it and they used it. Rebecca started calling me almost daily. At first, I was grateful. My daughter wanted to talk to me, but the conversations always ended the same way. She needed something. Could I watch her kids for the weekend? Could I loan her money for new tires? Could I co-sign for a car lease because her credit was ruined from the divorce? I said yes. Every time. I said yes. Daniel visited monthly, always with a crisis. The roof was leaking. Private school tuition had increased. Their old car was dying. Each visit came with a request, and I'd find myself opening my checkbook because what else did I have but my children? Anthony barely called unless he needed money, but when he did, he knew exactly how to phrase it. Mom, I know you're alone in that big house. Why don't you come help me at the restaurant? You could do the books, keep busy. Translation: work for free while also investing money. I did keep the books. Unpaid, I saw every transaction. I saw how much he was paying himself. I saw the expensive liquor he was buying for the bar that somehow never made it onto the sales register. But he was my son, and the restaurant was his dream. 4 years after Tom died, I had an incident. I fell in my garden and broke my wrist badly. Compound fracture. I needed surgery, pins, the whole ordeal. I was in the hospital for 3 days, then came home to an empty house with one functioning hand. I called Daniel. Honey, I hate to ask, but could someone stay with me for a few days? I can't cook, can't dress myself properly, just until I can manage the basics. Mom, Jennifer, and I are completely swamped. The kids have soccer tournaments all weekend. Jennifer's overwhelmed with her PTA responsibilities. Can't you hire someone? Hire someone. to help his mother who'd given him $25,000. I called Rebecca. "Sweetheart, I've had a fall. I'm really struggling here." "Oh, Mom, I'm so exhausted. The kids are driving me crazy, and I'm trying to get back into dating. It's such a nightmare. You know how hard it is. Can you just order food delivery? I could maybe stop by next week." Next week? I needed help now. Anthony didn't even answer his phone. When he finally called back 2 days later, I mentioned the fall. "That's rough, Mom. Hey, I actually called because the restaurant's refrigeration unit just died. It's going to be $12,000 to replace it. Any chance you could help out? This is really urgent." I sat in my house with my broken wrist, unable to open a jar or tie my shoes, and my youngest child was asking me for $12,000. I hired a home health aide. Cost me $200 a day for 2 weeks. I paid it from the account that I'd been using to help my children. Something changed in me during those 2 weeks. Clara, my aide, was from the Philippines. She was 60 years old, working to send money home to her own grandchildren. She told me about her daughter who called her every day, about her son who video chatted with her every Sunday, about grandchildren who drew pictures for her and mailed them across the ocean. "They worry about me," Clara said. "They tell me I work too hard. They tell me to rest." My children had my number. They lived within an hour's drive. I'd broken my wrist, had surgery, and none of them could spare a single day. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I began tracking every dollar I'd given them since Tom died. I went through bank statements, canceled checks, everything. The number made me physically ill. $267,000. In 4 years, I'd given my children $267,000. Daniel's house had been $50,000 more than I'd originally given him. The check I wrote was only part of his down payment. Rebecca's divorce lawyer fees turned out to be double what she'd told me because she'd asked twice, months apart, and I'd forgotten the first payment. Anthony's restaurant had consumed over $90,000 in small increments. I was 70 years old. I'd drained nearly half of my savings, and when I'd needed help, they were too exhausted for my problems. But the real discovery came 3 months later, and it changed everything. I was helping Anthony with the restaurant books again. He'd asked me to come in because his accountant had questions. While I was in the office, his accountant, Martin, made a comment. "Lorraine, I hope Daniel is doing right by you with that rental property situation. That's a sweet deal he's got." I smiled and nodded, having no idea what Martin was talking about. But I didn't let it show. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rental property? What rental property? The next morning, I did something I'd never done. I searched public records, tax records, property records, all online, all public information. Daniel owned 4 properties. 4. The house he lived in, which I'd helped him buy, and 3 rental properties. The first one had been purchased 7 years ago, the year before Tom died. The second one 3 years ago. The third one 18 months ago. Each property had a mortgage, and each mortgage had an auto pay set up from an account I didn't recognize. I dug deeper. My name was on that account. It was a joint account Tom had set up years ago for estate planning purposes, with Daniel as the other co-owner for when we eventually passed. It had been dormant for years with just a minimal balance, until 4 years ago, right after Tom died. Daniel had been depositing money from me into that old joint account, then using it to pay mortgages on rental properties he owned. Properties that were generating income. Properties he'd never mentioned. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My son was using my money to build a rental empire while telling me he was between contracts. I checked further. The rental income from those 3 properties. Approximately $8,400 per month after expenses. Before the mortgages I was unknowingly paying. I couldn't breathe. I called my lawyer, Susan, someone I'd known for 30 years. She pulled records. We spent 3 hours going through everything. "Lorraine," she said, her voice tight with anger. "This is financial exploitation. What he's doing, it's using your money without your knowledge to pay for his investment properties. The account might be joint, but you clearly didn't authorize this use." We looked at Rebecca next. Her divorce had been finalized 2 years ago. She'd gotten the house, child support, alimony. Her ex-husband Marcus had been a successful architect. I called Marcus. We'd always had a decent relationship. "Lorraine, how are you? I've been meaning to reach out." We talked. I carefully asked about the divorce settlement. Marcus was candid. I gave her everything. The house, full custody. I'm paying $3,000 a month in child support and $2,500 in alimony. Plus I covered all the legal fees. My lawyer cost me $40,000 and I paid for hers too, another $30,000. I didn't want it to get ugly for the kids' sake. Rebecca had told me she needed $18,000 for lawyer fees. Marcus had paid for her lawyer. Every penny I'd given her had been a lie. If you're watching this and you've ever been taken advantage of by family, hit that subscribe button. You're not alone. We're going to get through this together. Anthony was easier to verify. I already did his books. His restaurant was actually doing fine. Not great, but fine. He was paying himself a $60,000 salary, taking distributions, and the business was stable. Every emergency had been manufactured. I sat in my living room in the house Tom and I had bought in 1979, and I felt something I'd never felt toward my children before. Rage. Not hurt. Not disappointment. Rage. They had systematically exploited me. They had seen a lonely widow, and they had extracted every dollar they could. When I needed them, they were too exhausted, too busy, too overwhelmed. I called Susan back. "What are my options?" She laid it out. I could sue Daniel for the mortgage payments, but it would be complicated because of the joint account. I could demand repayment from all of them, but enforcing it would mean court, family destruction, years of legal battles. Or I could simply stop. "What do you mean, stop?" I asked. "You control your money, Lorraine. They have no legal claim to it. Daniel's auto pay works because you keep money in that joint account. Rebecca asks because you keep saying yes. Anthony's emergencies exist because you keep covering them. Just stop." It was so simple, so obvious, so impossible to see when you're drowning in it. I thought about it for 2 weeks. I played out scenarios. I imagined confrontations. I practiced speeches in my head. Then I decided I wasn't going to explain anything. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to defend myself. I was simply going to stop participating in my own exploitation. First, I went to the bank. The joint account with Daniel had $43,000 in it, money I'd deposited over the past 6 months. I withdrew every penny except for $10 to keep it open. I moved it to a new account at a different bank, one with only my name on it. The mortgage payments on Daniel's rental properties were all set to auto pay from that account. First of the month, like clockwork. 3 mortgages, totaling $6,100 monthly. I withdrew the money on the 28th. Second, I called my phone company and changed my number. I didn't tell my children the new one. Third, I called my lawyer and had her draft a formal letter to each of my children, documenting every dollar I'd given them and explicitly stating that no further financial assistance would be provided. Not a demand for repayment, just a clear boundary. The letter was factual, cold, and legal. Fourth, I blocked their email addresses. I blocked them on social media. I removed them as beneficiaries on my life insurance and changed my will, leaving everything to charities. I did all of this in 3 days. Then I waited. The mortgage payments bounced on the 1st. Daniel called my old number 37 times that first day. He sent 43 text messages. He emailed. He showed up at my house that evening, pounding on the door. I didn't answer. I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching him through the window as he raged on my porch. His wife, Jennifer, eventually dragged him back to the car. I heard her hissing at him. "I told you this would happen eventually. I told you that you were taking too much." The banks don't waste time with bounced mortgage payments. Daniel received default notices within a week. On investment properties, they move even faster because there's more risk. Rebecca figured it out when she tried to call and got the number no longer in service message. She drove over, found me gone. I'd started spending my days at the local library and coffee shops and left a note on my door. "Mom, please call me. Whatever's wrong, we can fix this." Fix it. Like I was the problem that needed fixing. Anthony took the longest to notice because he'd never called unless he needed something. When he finally did need something, his liquor supplier wanted payment up front. He couldn't reach me. He asked Daniel for my new number. Daniel didn't have it. They called Rebecca. She didn't have it either. That's when they realized they had no way to contact me. Their mother had vanished. Susan told me they'd tried to reach her office. She refused to give them any information except to say I was safe and acting of my own free will. She confirmed she'd sent them letters. They'd all received them. They knew I knew everything. Week 3, Daniel's rental properties went into foreclosure proceedings. 60 days until the bank took them back. The rental income he'd been pocketing would end. The equity he'd built with my money would be consumed by penalties and fees. Jennifer called Susan's office, threatening to sue me for elder abuse. Susan laughed in her face. "Your husband committed financial exploitation of a senior. If anyone's suing anyone, it won't be in your favor. Tell Daniel to count himself lucky Lorraine isn't pressing charges." Rebecca tried a different approach. She went to my church. She told people I was having a mental breakdown, that she was worried about me, that I needed help. She created a whole narrative where she was the concerned daughter and I was the confused elderly mother. The pastor, Father Michael, called Susan. Susan connected him with me. I explained the situation calmly, showing him the documentation. Father Michael was horrified. The next Sunday, Rebecca showed up at church expecting sympathy. Instead, Father Michael pulled her aside and told her that bearing false witness was a sin and that he was aware of the situation. Rebecca never came back to my church. Anthony's approach was anger. He left voicemails on Susan's office line, screaming about how I was destroying his business, how I was a terrible mother, how he'd never forgive me. Susan saved every message. "Documentation," she told me, "in case we need it." Month 2, Daniel lost 2 of the rental properties. The bank moved fast. He managed to sell the third one in a short sale, salvaging some dignity but losing all the equity. The house he lived in was safe. That mortgage was in his and Jennifer's names, paid from their account, but his investment dreams died. The passive income he'd been building on my money evaporated. I heard through my neighbor, whose son worked with Daniel's wife, that they'd had to pull their kids from private school. Jennifer had to go back to work full-time. Rebecca ran out of money. Without my occasional loans, she couldn't maintain her lifestyle. She'd been spending the child support on herself and using my money for the actual child expenses. Her kids were fine. Marcus made sure of that with his support payments. But Rebecca had to downsize her house and cut back on her spending. Anthony's restaurant survived, but just barely. He had to actually manage it properly, cut his own salary, and stop siphoning off premium liquor. He was furious, but he was also trapped. He'd built his business model around having me as a secret investor. 3 months in, I received a letter. Not from my children, from my grandchildren. Daniel's oldest, Sophia, was 20. She wrote, "Grandma, I don't know what happened between you and Dad, but I want you to know I love you. Dad won't talk about it, but I can tell something big went down. If you ever want to meet for coffee, just me, I'd really like that." That letter made me cry. But I didn't respond. Not yet. Because Sophia was an adult who could make her own choices, but I wasn't going to triangulate my relationship with my children through their children. Month 4, Daniel sent a formal letter through his lawyer. It was a settlement offer. He acknowledged misuse of the joint account. He offered to pay me back $18,000, a fraction of what he'd taken, if I would sign a release of all claims and restore contact. I had Susan respond, "Mrs. Mitchell declines your offer. She has no interest in financial restitution at this time. She will consider restoring contact when you provide a full accounting of all funds misappropriated, a genuine apology that demonstrates understanding of the harm caused, and a commitment to attend family therapy. Until then, she exercises her right to boundaries. Rebecca tried to show up on my 72nd birthday with flowers and tears. I watched her from the window. She sat on my porch for 2 hours, crying, leaving notes. She'd brought a card signed by my grandchildren. That one was harder. But I didn't open the door, because here's what I'd realized. My children didn't miss me. They missed my money. They missed my compliance. They missed having an easy mark. Not once, not in 4 months, had any of them actually apologized. They'd made excuses, blamed me for overreacting, threatened legal action, played victim, and tried manipulation. But not one of them had said, "Mom, I'm sorry, I took advantage of you, I was wrong." Month 5 brought the breakthrough. Daniel showed up not at my house, but at the library where I spent my afternoons. He looked terrible, thinner, older, tired. He sat down across from me. "Mom, I can't reach you any other way." I closed my book and waited. "I've been in therapy," he said. "Individual therapy," Jennifer insisted. "After we lost the properties and had to pull the kids from school, she gave me an ultimatum. Figure out what's wrong with me or she's done." I still didn't speak. "The therapist asked me to map out every time I asked you for money. Every time. And when I did, when I saw it all written out," his voice cracked, "Mom, I became Dad." That got my attention. Not the good parts of Dad, the parts he hated about himself. You remember how his father used Grandma? How he'd always be asking her for money, making her feel guilty, bleeding her dry. Dad swore he'd never be like that. And I watched him keep that promise my whole life. He treated you like a partner. He respected you. Daniel put his head in his hands. "And then he died. And I saw you alone. And instead of taking care of you like he would have wanted, I saw an opportunity. I saw assets. I saw someone who wouldn't say no." He looked up at me, and I saw real pain in his face. I told myself I was building something for my family. I told myself you had plenty. I told myself you wanted to help, but the truth is, I exploited you. I used your grief and your loneliness to fund my life. When you broke your wrist and needed help, I couldn't be bothered because you weren't useful to me in that moment. You were just needy. And I'm so ashamed, I can't breathe. I felt something crack in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. He was finally seeing it. "The properties are gone," he continued. "The investment dream is over. Jennifer's working. We're in a normal house. The kids are in public school. And you know what? We're fine. We were always fine. I just wanted more. I wanted to be impressive. I wanted to be successful like I thought Dad was. And I destroyed my relationship with my mother to get it." He slid an envelope across the table. "I can't pay back everything. Not now. Maybe not ever. But this is $10,000. It's the profit from the short sale on the last property. It belongs to you, and I'm going to keep paying, however long it takes." Then he said something that broke through my defenses completely. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to come to Christmas or meet the grandkids or be in my life. I just need you to know that I finally understand what I did, and I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry, Mom." He stood up, left the envelope, and walked away. I sat there for an hour, staring at that envelope. That evening, Rebecca showed up at the library parking lot. She'd clearly coordinated with Daniel. She was more composed than I'd ever seen her. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said through my car window. "I'm here to tell you the truth. Marcus paid for my lawyer. I used your money for cosmetic procedures and shopping and trying to make myself feel better about my divorce by spending money. I told myself I deserved it after what Marcus put me through. But Marcus didn't put me through anything. He was kind in the divorce. I was the one who cheated. I was the one who ended it. And I made you pay for my choices while lying to your face." She took a shaky breath. I've told Marcus everything. I've apologized to him. I told my kids the truth about why you're not in our lives right now, and they're old enough to understand. They're disappointed in me, as they should be. She handed me a piece of paper through the window. That's a payment plan. I'm going back to work full-time. I'm going to pay you back, not because you asked, but because I owe you. And more than money, I owe you the truth, which is that you were a wonderful mother, and I was a terrible daughter. I took the paper. Rebecca walked away. Anthony took the longest. Month 7, he finally appeared. At the library again. Apparently Daniel had told them where to find me. He didn't sit down. He stood at a respectful distance. I don't have a good excuse, he said. Daniel had his therapy revelations. Rebecca had her honesty breakthrough. Me? I was just selfish. I saw you as a bank. When you needed me, you were inconvenient. I'm not going to dress it up or make it deeper than it is. I used you. I'm sorry. I'm working on being better, but that doesn't undo anything. He put a check on the table. $5,000. It's what I can spare right now. I'll send more when I can. You don't have to respond or forgive me or anything else. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. He left. I went home that night and spread it all out on my kitchen table. Daniel's envelope, Rebecca's payment plan, Anthony's check, Susan's documentation of everything they'd taken. They'd taken $267,000 over 4 years. They were offering to pay back maybe $60,000 optimistically over several years. The math didn't work. It would never work. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was that they'd finally seen me, not as a resource, not as a checkbook, as a person they'd harmed. The point was that I'd drawn a boundary and held it, even when it hurt. The point was that I'd stopped being complicit in my own exploitation. I called Susan. Set up a meeting, all 3 of them, together, with me, mediated. I'm ready to talk. We met in Susan's conference room, neutral territory. Susan laid out ground rules. My children sat on one side of the table, and I sat on the other. I told them everything I've told you, how I felt, what I'd discovered, why I'd done what I'd done. Then I said, I'm not interested in being paid back. Keep your money, invest it in therapy, invest it in your kids, invest it in becoming people who don't exploit vulnerable family members. Daniel started to protest. I held up my hand. What I want is simple. I want genuine relationships with you if we can build them. Not based on money, not based on obligation, based on mutual respect. That means regular contact that isn't related to finances. That means showing up when someone needs help. That means being honest. I looked at each of them. I'm 72 years old. I have a good 10 or 20 years left if I'm lucky. I've spent the last 4 years being lonely while surrounded by children who only wanted my money. I'm done with that. So here's the deal. We start over. Slow, with boundaries, with honesty. Or we don't have a relationship at all. Rebecca was crying. We can do that. I want that. Anthony nodded. I'll try. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I'll try. Daniel said, I want my mother back, the real one, and I want to be the son she raised, not the one I became. That was 8 months ago. It's not perfect. Daniel and I have coffee once a week, and sometimes it's awkward. Rebecca and I are slowly rebuilding, and she's been making her payments without me asking. Anthony sends me pictures from the restaurant and calls every Sunday, which is more than he ever did before. I've met my grandchildren again, Sophia, and I have lunch monthly. She knows everything, and she says it's made her more careful about how she treats people. I still live alone in my house. I still have most of my money, what's left of it. I've started traveling, something Tom and I always planned to do but never quite got around to. Last month, I went to Nova Scotia. Next month, I'm going to Santa Fe. My children don't ask me for money anymore. When they face problems, they solve them themselves. And you know what? They're capable. They always were. They just didn't have to be when I was enabling them. The mortgage auto pay that failed 8 months ago changed all of our lives. It ended their financial comforts, yes, But it also ended my financial exploitation. It ended the fake relationship we'd been having and made room for real ones. I'm not going to tell you that everything is healed or perfect, or that we're one big, happy family again. We're not. We're a family in recovery. A family learning how to be honest. A family figuring out what we mean to each other when money isn't in the equation. But for the first time in 6 years, since Tom died, I'm not lonely. Because the people in my life now are there because they want to be, not because I'm useful. And that, I've learned, is worth more than any amount of money I gave away.